Hello, my friend. Welcome to your sleep story. My name is Justin, and I am an American storyteller. It is a true pleasure to be with you tonight, to share a quiet moment and a gentle tale as you prepare for a deep and peaceful rest. The story I have for you this evening is one that came to me on a recent afternoon. One of those days when the sky turned a soft, bruised purple and the heavens opened up. The rain came down, not in a fury, but with a steady, hushing sound. A sound that has always felt to me like the world taking a long, slow breath. It made me think of old, quiet places built of stone and timber that have listened to that same rain for centuries. It made me think of finding shelter, of unexpected comfort, and of the small, quiet friendships that can blossom in the most peaceful of corners. And so, tonight's story is about just that. It is called Rain on the Roof of Sleepy Abbey. We will travel to an old, peaceful abbey, nestled in a green and gentle valley. We will meet a quiet soul who finds his solitude made warmer by a tiny, unexpected guest. It is a story with no sharp edges, no loud noises, only the soft patter of rain, the crackle of a warm fire, and the gentle rhythm of a peaceful heart. There is nowhere you need to be, and nothing you need to do, except to listen to the sound of my voice and allow yourself to drift. But before our story begins, let us first take a moment to settle in, to let go of the day that has been, and to prepare our bodies and our minds for the deep and restorative rest they deserve. We will do this together, with a simple countdown from 10 down to 1. With each number, we will sink a little deeper into comfort, a little further into peace. So, find your most comfortable position, let your eyes drift closed if they have not already, and let us begin. 10. Begin by noticing the solid and steady support beneath you. Feel the weight of your body being held completely by your bed, your mattress. There is no effort required from you. You are held, you are supported. Imagine that support extending downwards, through the floor, through the foundations of your home, and deep into the quiet, steadfast earth below. You are connected to this great, calm stillness. You are safe. You are secure. 9. Now, let my voice be a gentle guide for you. There's no need to hold on to it too tightly. Let it be like a soft sound in the distance, a comforting presence in the room with you. It is here to keep you company as you drift. You are in a safe space, a warm haven created just for you. Nothing can disturb you here. Everything is calm. Everything is peaceful. 8. Bring your awareness to your breath. Do not try to change it. Just notice it for a moment. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest or your abdomen. With your next inhalation, imagine drawing in calm, clean air, filling your lungs with peace. And as you exhale, release it with a soft sigh. Soft sigh. Let go of any tension you might be holding in your body. Let your shoulders soften and drop away from your ears. Let your jaw unclench. Let the tiny muscles around your eyes relax completely. With each breath out, you're letting go. You're sinking deeper. 7. Thoughts may come and go, and that is perfectly all right. Do not try to fight them or push them away. Simply acknowledge them and then let them drift by like soft, fluffy clouds passing through a vast and quiet sky. Or perhaps imagine them as leaves, gently placed upon the surface of a slow-moving, moonlit river, carried away downstream until they are out of sight. Your mind is becoming as clear and as calm as that starlit water. 6. Realize that in this moment, there is absolutely nothing for you to do. Nowhere to be now. Nowhere to go. No obligations to fulfill. The day is done. All of its tasks and worries have been put to rest. This time is purely for you. It is a gift of quiet, a sanctuary of stillness. You have permission to simply be, to rest. 5. Bring to mind the feeling of inner peace. Imagine it as a warm, gentle light glowing softly in the center of your chest. This peace is always with you. It is your constant, faithful friend. Feel the warmth of that light begin to spread, flowing from your heart, down into your arms and into your fingertips. Feel it spreading up into your shoulders, your neck, and your head. Feel it flowing down through your torso, into your legs, and all the way to the tips of your toes. Your entire body is filled with this warm, soothing, peaceful light. 4. Let a gentle feeling of gratitude wash over you. Gratitude for this moment of rest. Gratitude for the simple comfort of your bed. Gratitude for the roof over your head, keeping you safe and dry. Gratitude for your body, for all the work it has done for you today. And gratitude for this time, this precious time to heal and to recharge. A soft, warm feeling of thankfulness fills your heart. 3. Now, let us begin to engage our imagination, the gentle gateway to our story. Begin to picture a soft, misty evening. See the gentle fall of rain, not a harsh storm, but a steady, hushing drizzle. Hear the soft patter of that rain on a window pane. Imagine the cozy glow of a fire casting warm, dancing shadows on old stone walls. You're preparing to step into our story, into the quiet halls of Sleepy Abbey. 2. Let's take one final scan of your body, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. If you find any lingering tension, any little pockets of tautness, just breathe into them. And as you breathe out, imagine that tension melting away like a snowflake on a warm hand. Let it all dissolve into the comfort beneath you. Your body is heavy, relaxed, and ready for sleep. 1. You are here now, completely present, completely relaxed. It is time to let go entirely. Let go of your body. Let go of your thoughts. Let go of everything and just float. Drift into the story, allowing the words to paint pictures in your mind as you sink down, 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 into a deep and wonderful sleep. The rain began in the late afternoon, a soft and whispered promise that had been hovering in the gray clouds all day. It fell upon the ancient, moss-dusted slates of Sleepy Abbey with a sound like 1,000 tiny fingertips drumming a gentle rhythm. The abbey, nestled in the fold of a green and rolling valley, seemed to sigh contentedly, settling into the damp embrace of the evening. Its stone walls, thick and sturdy, had listened to this same song of the rain for over 600 years. They had absorbed the chill of winter winds and the warmth of summer suns, and now they simply stood, patient and gray against the fading light. Inside the Abbey's grand library, a single figure moved with a quiet, practiced grace. This was Brother Alistair, the keeper of the books. He was a man who seemed to be made of the same gentle, weathered materials as the Abbey itself. His hair was the color of dried parchment, and his eyes held the soft, thoughtful gray of the evening sky. He was not old, nor was he young. He existed in that comfortable, settled space in between, a space that suited the timeless nature of his surroundings. The library was his sanctuary. It was a vast, cavernous room with a high, vaulted ceiling from which the shadows of evening loved to hang like sleeping bats. Two towering, arched windows looked out onto the cloister garden, their leaded panes now streaked with silver rivulets of rain. The air within smelled of old paper, beeswax, and the faint sweet scent of wood smoke that drifted from the enormous fireplace dominating the far wall. In that fireplace, a fire crackled and hissed, a cheerful, living heart in the quiet body of the room. It cast a warm, flickering light across the spines of countless books. The shelves, carved from dark, ancient oak, reached almost to the ceiling, creating canyons and alleyways of silent stories. Here lived tales of saints and scholars, histories of forgotten kings, volumes of poetry that had not been read aloud in a century, and treatises on the stars and the seasons. Each book was a quiet friend to Brother Alistair. He was currently engaged in a task he found deeply soothing, the mending of a very old book of maps. Its leather cover was cracked and dry like parched earth, and the spine had given way. With delicate, patient fingers, he was stitching the pages back to their binding with a waxed linen thread. The tiny, rhythmic pull of the needle through the paper was a form of meditation for him. Pull, tighten, knot. Each stitch was a small act of care, a gesture of respect for the knowledge and the history held within the fragile pages. The only sounds in the library were the soft whisper of his thread, the gentle crackle and pop of the logs in the hearth, and the steady, lulling drum of the rain on the roof. Crackling fire and gentle rain. It was a symphony of peace, a melody that Alistair knew by heart. He loved the rain. It seemed to wash the world clean, but it also drew a cozy curtain around the abbey, making the world outside feel distant and unimportant. On rainy days, the library felt even more like a haven, a ship of stone and knowledge sailing calmly through a gray, watery world. He paused in his work, holding the needle poised in midair. He tilted his head, listening. The sound of the rain had deepened slightly, the drumming on the slate roof now accompanied by a softer, more musical dripping from the stone gargoyles that watched over the garden. He could just make out their grotesque, friendly faces through the wavering glass of the window. They had been spitting rainwater into the garden for centuries, their stony mouths open in a perpetual silent song. Alistair set the needle down carefully on a small square of velvet. He rose from his stool, his joints making a soft creaking sound that echoed the old wood of the abbey. He stretched his back, feeling the gentle pull in his muscles. The firelight made his simple brown robe glow with a warm, amber light. He walked over to one of the tall windows, his soft-soled slippers making no sound on the cold flagstones. He rested his forehead against the cool glass, the chill of it a pleasant contrast to the warmth of the room. Outside, the world was dissolving into shades of gray and green. The cloister garden was soaked and glistening. The stone pathways shone like polished silver, and every leaf on the rose bushes wore a trembling jewel of water. The air smelled of wet earth and damp stone, a clean, ancient scent that seeped even through the thick walls. He felt a familiar sense of deep, unwavering contentment. His life was a quiet one, a life of simple routines and silent companionship with the past. He sought nothing more. He awoke with the morning bells, he tended to his books, he ate his simple meals with the other brothers in the refectory, and he slept when the evening bells rang out across the valley. It was a life as steady and predictable as the turning of the pages in a well-loved book. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. As he stood there, watching the rain blur the edges of the world, a faint sound reached him. It was small, and so out of place in the familiar symphony of the library that at first he thought he had imagined it. It was a thin, high-pitched cry, like the squeak of a rusty hinge, but with a note of desperate life in it. He straightened up, his brow furrowed in gentle curiosity. He listened again, holding his breath. The fire crackled, the rain pattered, and there it was again. A little louder this time, a tiny mewling sound that seemed to come from somewhere near the base of the great stone fireplace. It was a sound of distress, small and fragile, and it pricked at the quiet surface of his peaceful evening. Alistair moved away from the window, his slippers whispering across the stone floor. He approached the fireplace, his eyes scanning the dark shadows near the hearth. The firelight danced and played tricks with the eye, making the shadows writhe and deepen. The sound came again, a weak but insistent plea. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the old wood box, a large, sturdy oak chest where the logs for the fire were kept. He knelt down, the stone cold against his knees. He peered into the shadows beside the box. At first, he saw nothing but dust motes dancing in the firelight and the rough texture of the stone wall. Then he saw a flicker of movement. A tiny, trembling shape, no bigger than his hand, was huddled against the wall. It was a small, bedraggled kitten. Its fur was a patchwork of soot and wet, a miserable dark gray. It was shivering violently, its tiny body shaken with cold and fear. Its eyes, wide and luminous in the dim light, were a startling shade of green, like new spring leaves. It looked up at the large, looming shape of Brother Alistair and let out another pitiful cry, a sound that seemed far too large for such a small creature. Alistair's heart, a quiet and steady thing, gave a gentle lurch of compassion. He did not know how such a tiny animal could have found its way into the heart of the Abbey, into the very sanctuary of the library. Perhaps through some old, forgotten vent or a crack in the ancient foundation. It did not matter. What mattered was the small, shivering life before him. He slowly extended a hand, his movements calm and deliberate, so as not to frighten the creature further. "There now, little one," he murmured, his voice soft and low, a sound that was rarely used in the silent library. "You are safe now. You have found a warm place." The kitten flinched at his approach, pressing itself tighter against the cold stone. It tried to hiss, but the sound came out as a tiny, sputtering puff of air. Alistair simply held his hand still, letting the kitten see it, smell it. He could feel the warmth of the fire on the back of his hand and the cool draft from the floor on his palm. He waited with the same patience he used to mend his books. Slowly, hesitantly, the kitten stretched its tiny neck forward. Its nose, a small damp button of black, twitched as it took in his scent. It took a wobbly step forward, then another. Finally, with a courage born of desperation, it pushed its small cold head into the palm of Alistair's hand. The touch was electric. He could feel the fine, rapid vibration of its shivering, the surprising coldness of its wet fur. A small, protective instinct bloomed in Alistair's chest, as warm and bright as the fire itself. He curled his fingers gently, cupping the kitten's head. With his other hand, he carefully scooped up the rest of its small, light body. It was shockingly weightless, a little bundle of bones and damp fur. The kitten did not struggle. It seemed to have exhausted all of its energy in finding this place of warmth. It simply lay in his hands, trembling. He rose to his feet, cradling the tiny creature against the warm wool of his robe. "Well," he whispered to the kitten, who looked up at him with those wide green eyes, "it seems the rain has brought us a visitor." He looked around the vast, quiet library, his library. It was a place of solitude, a place of peace. And now it was a place of rescue. A gentle smile touched his lips. His quiet, predictable evening had just become something else entirely. Alistair carried the kitten over to the hearth, his movements slow and measured. The little creature had stopped shivering quite so violently, seeming to draw warmth from the wool of his robe and the closeness of his body. It was curled into a tight, miserable ball in his palms, its eyes half closed in what he hoped was relief rather than exhaustion. "First things first," he murmured, more to himself than to the kitten. "We must get you dry and properly warm." He looked around for something suitable. His gaze fell upon a pile of soft, clean linen cloths he kept for polishing the wooden shelves and wiping dust from the book covers. They were kept in a low cupboard near his mending desk. He walked to the desk, the kitten a faint, precious weight in his hands. He set the creature down for a moment on the worn wooden surface of the desk, on a clear patch between a pot of paste and the half-mended book of maps. The kitten immediately tried to curl in on itself, looking impossibly small and out of place amidst the tools of his quiet trade. Alistair opened the cupboard door, the old wood groaning softly in protest. He pulled out a fresh linen cloth. It was soft and absorbent, the color of cream. He brought it back to the desk and gently, carefully began to dry the kitten. He started with its tiny head, dabbing at the fur around its ears and face. The kitten flinched at first, but as the soft cloth began to absorb the cold dampness, it relaxed, even leaning into his touch with a faint, rumbling sound that might one day become a purr. As he dried its body, he discovered that beneath the soot and grime, its fur was not gray at all. It was the color of a stormy sky, a soft, deep charcoal, with a surprising patch of pure white on its chest, like a small fluffy cloud. Its fur was matted and thin, but he could feel the promise of softness beneath. He worked with a gentle, focused attention, the same attention he gave to a fragile manuscript. He dried its tiny paws, each one no bigger than his thumbnail, and its whip-thin tail. When the kitten was mostly dry, it began to shake again, but this time it was a less desperate shiver. It seemed to be a shiver of returning life, a feeling beginning to creep back into its cold limbs. Alistair picked it up again and held it close to the fire, letting the radiant heat wash over them both. He sat down in his large, comfortable reading chair, an old wingback with worn leather arms, and settled the kitten on his lap. He continued to gently rub it with the cloth, creating a soft friction that helped to warm its skin. The kitten, nestled in the warm cloth on his lap, finally stopped shivering. It blinked its large green eyes slowly, looking up at Alistair's face, then at the dancing flames in the fireplace. It seemed to be taking in its new surroundings with a dawning sense of wonder and security. A tiny pink tongue darted out and licked its nose. "You must be hungry," Alistair said softly. The thought of food brought him to his next challenge. The Abbey kitchen was a long walk away, down cold stone corridors and across the windy cloister. But he remembered that Brother Thomas, the kindly friar who managed the kitchens, often left a small jug of milk in the pantry just off the refectory for anyone who might want a warm drink before bed. He looked at the small creature on his lap. It seemed to have fallen into a light, exhausted doze. He couldn't possibly leave it alone. With a gentle sigh that was part resignation and part affection, he carefully stood up, holding the kitten securely in one arm, wrapped in its linen cocoon. He would have to take his new charge with him. The journey to the pantry was a quiet adventure. The library was the warmest room in the Abbey, save for the kitchen itself. As soon as he stepped out into the corridor, the air grew noticeably cooler. The stone walls seemed to exhale a damp chill, and the only light came from flickering tallow candles set in iron sconces at long intervals. Their small flames threw his shadow, now large and stooped, against the walls, making it dance and leap ahead of him. The kitten stirred in his arms, pressing closer to his body for warmth. Alistair held it tighter, whispering reassuring words. "Just a short journey," he promised. "We'll be back in the warm soon." His soft footsteps echoed faintly in the long, empty hallway. The sound of the rain was more muted here, a distant, rushing sound that spoke of the wild, wet world outside their stone shell. He passed the entrance to the chapel, its great wooden doors shut tight. From within he could hear nothing, but he could imagine the deep, sacred silence in there. The smell of old incense and cold stone, the colored light from the stained glass windows sleeping until the morning sun would awaken it. He walked past the dormitory, where his brothers would now be in their simple cells, perhaps reading by candlelight or already lost in sleep. He reached the refectory, a long, high-ceilinged room filled with rows of dark, empty tables and benches. The moonlight, filtered through the high windows, cast pale, ghostly rectangles on the floor. It was a cold, unwelcoming space at night. Alistair did not linger. He quickly found the small pantry door tucked away in a corner. Inside it was dark and cool, with the earthy smell of potatoes and onions stored in bins and the sharper scent of herbs hanging in bunches from the ceiling. He fumbled for a moment before finding a small saucer on a shelf. He then located the jug of milk, just as he had hoped. It was cool to the touch. He poured a small amount into the saucer, the white liquid looking luminous in the gloom. He now had a problem of logistics. How to carry a saucer of milk and a kitten back through the dark corridors. After a moment's thought, he found a solution. He set the saucer down on the floor, then carefully placed the kitten beside it. The kitten, whose eyes had adjusted to the dark far better than his own, immediately noticed the milk. Its nose twitched, and it cautiously approached the saucer. It dipped its head, and its tiny pink tongue began to lap at the milk with a surprising speed. The soft, lapping sound was the only noise in the pantry. Alistair watched, a feeling of profound satisfaction warming him. He had done a good thing. He had provided comfort, warmth, and now sustenance to this small, lost creature. He waited patiently until the kitten had drunk its fill. It did not drink much, but its small belly looked distinctly rounder when it was finished. It looked up at him and gave a tiny, milky burp. Alistair could not suppress a quiet chuckle. Chuckles softly. He picked up the kitten, which now felt slightly heavier and much more content. It began to knead its tiny paws against his robe, a sure sign of its comfort. The journey back to the library felt shorter, warmer. He carried the empty saucer in his other hand. As he re-entered the library, the wave of warmth from the fire washed over them like a welcome and embrace. The familiar smell of books and wood smoke felt like coming home. He placed the saucer on his desk and returned to his chair, settling the kitten back on his lap. The creature immediately curled up, tucked its head under its own tail, and fell into a deep, trusting sleep. Its body rose and fell with a steady, peaceful rhythm. Alistair looked down at the small ball of charcoal-colored fur, and a feeling he could not quite name settled over him. His quiet, orderly world had been gently disrupted, and he found that he did not mind at all. He felt a connection to this tiny life, a responsibility. The library, which had always been his sanctuary from the world, now felt like a sanctuary for two. He picked up his book of maps, but he did not resume his mending. Instead, he simply sat there, in the warm glow of the fire, with the sleeping kitten on his lap. He listened to the rain on the roof, a sound that now seemed even more comforting, a lullaby for the small, new life he held in his care. The great clock in the Abbey's bell tower chimed the hour, its deep, sonorous tones rolling across the wet valley. Inside the library, all was quiet, all was warm, all was well. For a long while, Alistair simply sat, content to be a warm perch for the sleeping kitten. The fire dipped and swayed, painting the room in shifting shades of orange and gold. The rain on the roof was a constant, soothing presence, a soft drumming that seemed to measure out the slow, peaceful moments. The world outside the Abbey walls felt a universe away. Here, within these ancient stones, time seemed to slow down, to pool in quiet eddies of contentment. The kitten on his lap stirred, its tiny whiskers twitching. It stretched one minuscule paw, its needle-sharp claws extending and retracting from their soft sheaths. It let out a soft sigh in its sleep, a sound of pure, unadulterated peace. Alistair smiled down at it. He had never considered himself a man who needed a pet. His books were his companions, his routines were his comfort. But the solid, warm weight of this small creature on his lap felt undeniably right. It felt like a missing piece of the quiet he had not even known was lost. He realized the kitten would need a place to sleep, a proper bed of its own. His lap was comfortable, but he could not sit in this chair all night. He gently stroked the kitten's back with one finger, its fur now dry and surprisingly soft, like dandelion fluff. He had to find something that would be warm, soft, and feel safe to the little animal. His eyes scanned the familiar landscape of the library. They fell upon the wood box next to the hearth. It was too large and drafty. They passed over shelves of books, tables laden with scrolls. Then his gaze landed on a wicker basket in a far corner of the room. It was a basket he used for carrying newly repaired books back to their rightful places on the shelves to avoid juggling them. It was sturdy and deep. With the right lining, it could be perfect. Carefully, so as not to wake the kitten, he shifted its weight into the crook of one arm. The kitten mumbled in its sleep, but did not wake. He stood and walked quietly over to the basket. He brought it back and set it on the hearth rug in the golden circle of warmth cast by the fire. The woven wicker glowed in the light. Now it needed bedding. The linen cloth he had used to dry the kitten was still damp. He needed something else. He thought for a moment. In a large chest where he kept supplies for bookbinding, there were scraps of old parchment and leather, but also, he remembered, a few discarded robes that were too worn for the brothers to wear, but had been saved for their soft, felted wool, which could be cut up for patches. He carried the kitten with him to the chest, which sat against the far wall, deep in shadow. He lifted the heavy oak lid, which creaked a low, melodious groan. The scent of old wool and leather rose up to meet him. He rummaged inside, his fingers searching for the softest material. He found it, a section of a very old robe, worn so thin and soft by years of use that it felt like fleece. It was a deep, earthy brown. He tore off a generous piece. The fabric ripped with a soft, satisfying sound. He took the cloth back to the wicker basket and folded it carefully, creating a thick, soft nest inside. It looked inviting, a small, cozy haven. He stood back for a moment to admire his handiwork. It was a humble bed, but it was made with care. Now came the delicate task of transferring the kitten. He lowered the sleeping creature into the basket, onto the soft wool. The kitten, upon leaving the warmth of his arms, stirred and opened its green eyes. It looked around, blinking in the firelight. It saw the high walls of the basket surrounding it, felt the soft wool beneath it. It let out a tiny, questioning meow. Alistair knelt beside the basket. He reached in and gently stroked the kitten's head. "This is for you, little one," he whispered. "A safe place to sleep." He kept his hand there for a moment, a reassuring presence. The kitten, seemingly satisfied with this new arrangement, sniffed at the woolen bedding, turned around in a tight circle 3 times, and then curled up into a perfect, neat ball. Its eyes drifted shut, and within moments it was fast asleep again. Alistair watched it for a long time, a feeling of gentle accomplishment settling over him. He had provided shelter, warmth, food, and now a bed. He felt like the guardian of this small, fragile life. He rose and went back to his chair, feeling a strange sense of lightness. The library felt different now. It was no longer just a room full of books. It had a new heartbeat in it, a tiny, rhythmic breath rising and falling from the basket by the fire. He finally returned his attention to the book of maps. He picked up his needle and the waxed thread. The map on the page before him showed a coastline he did not recognize, a fantastical rendering of a land with dragons sleeping in the mountains and sea serpents frolicking in the waves. Before, he would have been lost in the imaginary geography of the drawing. But now, his attention was divided. Every few stitches, his eyes would drift from the ancient map to the wicker basket. He would pause to watch the kitten's flank rise and fall, to listen for its soft breathing beneath the sound of the rain and the fire. The 2 worlds, the one in his book and the one in his library, seemed to merge. The small kitten was like a tiny, living creature that had wandered out of a storybook and into his life. He thought about a name. A creature so small and yet so significant deserved a name. He considered names of saints, but they felt too grand. He thought of names from the old books, but they felt too complicated. He looked out the window at the dark, rain-swept glass. The clouds that had brought the rain, the great, soft, gray nimbus clouds. Nimbus. It meant cloud, but it also suggested a halo, a ring of light. It seemed fitting for a creature of the storm who had brought a new kind of light into his quiet room. Nimbus, he whispered to the sleeping kitten. The kitten did not stir, but the name felt right. It settled in the air as soft and fitting as the rain on the roof. He had a companion now. He had Nimbus. He worked on his book for another hour, the rhythmic task of stitching calming his mind. But his awareness was always anchored to the small basket by the fire. The presence of the kitten had changed the very texture of the silence in the room. It was no longer an empty silence, but a full one, a silence that held the potential for a soft meow, a gentle stir, a quiet purr. As the fire burned lower, turning from bright flames to a deep glowing bed of embers, Alistair began to feel the pleasant weight of sleepiness on his own eyelids. The day of quiet work, the unexpected excitement of his visitor, and the warmth of the room were conspiring to lull him to sleep. He knew he should retire to his own simple cell in the dormitory, but the thought of leaving the library, of leaving Nimbus alone, even for the night, gave him a small pang of reluctance. He looked at the basket where the kitten slept on, oblivious. He looked at his comfortable chair, its worn leather arms seeming to invite him to stay. The rain was softer now, a gentle, hypnotic shushing sound. The embers in the hearth glowed like 100 sleepy red eyes. He made a decision. For one night, he would break his routine. He would not sleep in his cold, solitary cell. He would stay here, in the warm heart of the Abbey, and stand watch over its newest, smallest resident. He rose and fetched a thick woolen blanket from another chest, one that smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. He returned to his chair, settled himself deep into its embrace, and draped the blanket over his lap and legs. He was comfortable. He was warm. He was exactly where he wanted to be. He did not try to read any more. He simply sat and watched the embers glow. He listened to the rain. He watched the steady, peaceful breathing of the kitten in the basket. The great library stood guard around them, its high, dark ceilings and silent, watchful books creating a fortress of peace. Alistair felt a profound sense of rightness, of being in his perfect place in the world. His eyes grew heavy, and with the sound of the rain as his lullaby, he let his head rest against the high back of the chair and drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep. The kind librarian and the little storm cloud kitten dreaming together in the warm, safe silence. Alistair awoke to a world washed in pale, gentle light. The rain had stopped. The library was filled with a soft, pearlescent grayness that signaled the dawn was breaking behind a thick blanket of clouds. For a moment, he was disoriented, unsure why he was in his reading chair, covered by a woolen blanket, instead of his narrow bed in the dormitory. Then, a tiny sound, a soft, questioning mew, brought the memory of the previous evening flooding back. He sat up, the blanket pooling in his lap, and looked towards the hearth. Two luminous green eyes were peering at him over the rim of the wicker basket. Nimbus was awake. The kitten stretched, its back arching in a perfect, fluid curve, and then it hopped nimbly out of the basket and onto the hearth rug. It looked transformed. A night of warmth and safety had fluffed its fur, and the sleep had erased the fear from its eyes, replacing it with a bright, alert curiosity. "Good morning, little one," Alistair said, his voice husky with sleep. Nimbus responded with another meow, this one more demanding, and trotted towards him on its small, delicate paws. It stopped at his feet and looked up, its tiny head cocked to one side. It was clearly expecting something. Breakfast, he presumed. Alistair smiled and slowly got to his feet, his joints stiff from sleeping in the chair. He stretched, feeling a pleasant ache in his back. He looked around the library. In the quiet morning light, the room felt fresh and new. The air was cool but clean, and the smell of old books was mingled with the faint, lingering scent of the night's wood smoke. The fire was nothing more than a pile of soft gray ash with a few stubborn, glowing embers winking at its heart. He scooped Nimbus up. The kitten was surprisingly solid and wriggly in his hands now, a far cry from the limp, cold creature of the night before. It immediately began to purr, a sound like a tiny, contented motor starting up. The vibration against his palms was a delightful, living thing. Alistair found himself stroking the soft fur on its back, marveling at its resilience. "All right, breakfast it is," he conceded, carrying the purring kitten with him as he had the night before. "But we must be quiet. The others will be rising for morning prayers soon." He padded out of the library and into the still-sleeping corridors of the Abbey. The world felt hushed and expectant. The flagstones were cold beneath his soft slippers. Through the high windows he could see the sky, a vast canvas of soft grays and muted whites. The world outside looked clean and freshly laundered by the rain. He made his way back to the pantry, Nimbus tucked securely in his arm. This time he found a small bowl, better suited for a kitten than a saucer. He filled it with milk from the jug. Nimbus, placed on the floor, did not hesitate. It drank eagerly, its whole body wiggling with enthusiasm. While the kitten ate, Alistair found a piece of leftover bread for himself and a slightly wrinkled apple from a barrel. It would be a simple breakfast for them both. He sat on a low stool in the cool pantry, eating his apple and bread while the kitten finished its milk. The quiet sounds of their meal, the crunch of his apple, the soft lapping of the kitten's tongue, were the only noises in the stillness. It felt companionable, this shared, secret breakfast before the rest of the Abbey stirred to life. He felt like a conspirator, sharing a secret with his small, furry accomplice. When they were both finished, he wiped the kitten's milky whiskers with his thumb and picked it up. Nimbus was sleepy again, its small belly full. It rested its head on Alistair's shoulder and closed its eyes, purring its gentle, rhythmic song. Alistair felt a surge of affection so strong it surprised him. How had his life been complete without this small, purring weight on his shoulder? He carried the kitten back to the library, their sanctuary. The morning bells began to ring, their deep, resonant peals rolling through the valley, calling the brothers to prayer. It was the sound that had structured Alistair's every day for years. Usually, he would be making his way to the chapel now, his mind focused and ready for the familiar liturgy. But today, he hesitated at the library door. He looked down the long, cool corridor towards the chapel, then back into the warm, book-lined room where a wicker basket and a tiny kitten awaited. He knew his duty. He knew his routine. But his heart felt a gentle pull in a new direction. He made a choice. For the first time in many years, he would miss morning prayers. He justified it to himself easily. He could not leave Nimbus alone yet. The kitten was too small, too new to this place. It was his responsibility to watch over it. It was an act of care, and surely that was a form of prayer in itself. He stepped back inside the library and closed the heavy oak door behind him, the latch clicking softly into place. The sound seemed to seal them in, creating their own private world. The tolling of the bells faded, becoming a distant, muffled song. Inside, there was only the soft sound of the kitten's purring and the quiet beat of his own heart. He spent the morning in a state of quiet bliss. He rekindled the fire, laying fresh logs on the bed of embers until they caught and began to crackle cheerfully. The warmth spread through the room once more, chasing away the last of the morning chill. He settled back into his chair, and this time Nimbus did not go to its basket. Instead, it hopped onto his lap, curled up on the woolen blanket, and went back to sleep. Alistair did not try to work. He did not mend his book or sort his scrolls. He simply sat. He watched the light change as the sun slowly burned its way through the clouds. Shafts of soft, watery sunlight began to pierce the gloom, streaming through the high-arched windows. They illuminated dust motes dancing in the air like tiny golden fairies. The light touched the spines of the books, making the gold lettering gleam. It fell across the sleeping form of the kitten on his lap, turning its dark fur to silver. He studied the tiny creature. He noticed the delicate pink inside its ears, the way its whiskers were embedded in neat rows on its muzzle, the almost imperceptible twitch of its paws as it dreamed. He was discovering a whole new world, a world of small, intricate details that he had never taken the time to notice before. His books contained knowledge of the wide world, of history and stars, but this small creature contained the miracle of life itself, right here on his lap. Later in the morning, the kitten awoke and was filled with a playful energy. It chased a stray piece of lint across the stone floor, batting at it with its paws, its back arched and its tail puffed up in mock aggression. It discovered the long cord on Alistair's robe and pounced on it, wrestling with the tassel at the end. Alistair watched, utterly captivated. A soft, gentle humor bubbled up inside him. The dignified silence of his library was being filled with the tiny, comical antics of a kitten, and it felt wonderful. The room, which had always been peaceful, now felt joyful as well. He found a small piece of twine and dangled it for Nimbus to chase. The kitten leaped and tumbled, its green eyes wide with excitement. Alistair laughed, a quiet, rusty sound he had not made in a long time. Soft laugh. The sound seemed to surprise them both. Nimbus stopped its play and looked up at him, as if to ask what that strange, happy noise was. The day unfolded in this new, gentle rhythm. Periods of quiet sleep were punctuated by bursts of playful energy. Alistair found more milk for the kitten at midday. He even shared a small piece of cheese from his own lunch, which Nimbus devoured with gusto. He learned the kitten's different meows, the soft, questioning one, the loud, demanding one for food, and the happy, chirping one it made when it was playing. He did not see any of the other brothers. The library was at the most remote end of the abbey, and few of them had reason to visit unless they needed a specific text. His solitude, which had once been simply a fact of his life, now felt like a precious, protected secret. He and Nimbus were in their own world, a world of firelight, books, and quiet companionship. In the afternoon, the sun finally won its battle with the clouds. A brilliant, clean light flooded the library, making the colors in the stained glass windows blaze like jewels. Nimbus, fascinated by the patches of colored light on the floor, chased them, trying to pounce on the shifting pools of ruby red and sapphire blue. Alistair sat and watched, his heart full. The weariness he sometimes felt at the end of a long day of solitary work was gone. In its place was a feeling of warmth and connection. He had rescued the kitten, but in a way he felt that the kitten had also rescued him. It had rescued him from the quiet, unchanging pattern of his days, from a solitude so complete he hadn't even recognized it as loneliness. As evening approached once more, the light began to fade, and the library returned to its familiar cloak of warm shadows. The fire crackled, the great clock tower chimed the hours. Alistair lit a few candles, their small flames creating pools of gentle light on his desk. Everything was as it had been the night before, yet everything was different. Nimbus, tired from its day of discovery and play, hopped back onto his lap. It did not go to sleep immediately. It kneaded his leg with its paws, its purr a deep, rumbling thrum that he could feel through his whole body. It butted its head against his hand, demanding to be petted. Alistair obliged, stroking its soft head and scratching gently behind its ears. The kitten finally settled, its purr softening to a gentle hum, and it drifted off to sleep. Alistair looked down at the trusting, peaceful creature in his lap. He thought of the rain that had brought it to him. A storm had come, a small disruption to the world, and from it had come this unexpected gift. It was a reminder, he thought, that even in the gray and the wet, there could be unexpected warmth, unexpected light. He picked up his mending again, the book of maps lying open. He looked at the fantastical lands drawn on the page. His own world, he realized, had suddenly become a little more magical. He did not need to dream of faraway lands with dragons and sea serpents. He had his own small, magical creature right here, sleeping in his lap. He made a single, careful stitch, pulling the thread taut. The library was quiet again, but it was a new kind of quiet. It was the quiet of two friends resting together in the warm, safe heart of the old abbey. The rain had passed. The world outside was still and waiting for the stars, and inside, in the gentle, flickering candlelight, a quiet man and a small kitten had found a perfect peace. And as he sat there, with the weight of his new friend a comforting presence, Brother Alistair knew, with a certainty that filled his soul, that he was home. The story of his life had a new chapter, and it was one he would treasure. Now, let's move on to my second tale for tonight. I was thinking about journeys, not the frantic, bustling kind, but the slow, steady journeys that give us time to think, to feel, and to simply be. I remembered a train ride I took many years ago, through a landscape hushed and white with snow, and the profound sense of peace that settled over me then. Tonight's story is about a journey like that. It is a story about a quiet night train making its way through a world of sleeping mountains and soft, falling snow. It is a story about finding comfort in solitude, warmth in the cold, and a gentle connection to the world from the cozy safety of a moving haven. There is nowhere to be but here, on this journey with me. No great adventure awaits, no drama will unfold. There's only the steady rhythm of the train, the whisper of the snow, and the gentle unfolding of a peaceful night. So let us begin that journey together, first by settling in, and then by letting the story carry you away. Before our story begins, let us take a few moments to prepare for our journey into sleep. This is a time for you, a time to let go of all that has been and all that is yet to be. It is a time to simply rest. We will do this with a gentle countdown, from 10 down to 1. With each number, we will release a little more, sinking deeper and deeper into comfort and calm. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. Just allow my voice to be your guide, a steady and gentle presence as you drift. Let us begin with the number 10. At 10, I invite you to feel the solidness of the world beneath you. Feel the bed, the mattress, the pillows supporting you completely. Feel the weight of your body held and cradled. There is no effort required. You are supported by the bed, which is supported by the floor, which is supported by the very foundations of the building, all resting on the steady, patient earth. You are safe. You are held. Allow yourself to surrender to this feeling of support, letting your muscles soften and release their hold, knowing that you are completely and utterly secure. And now, 9. At 9, you can give yourself permission to feel safe in this space. My voice is here with you, a kind and gentle guide. It will not ask anything of you. It is simply here to accompany you on your way to rest. Nothing can disturb you here. This time is yours alone. Imagine a soft, warm bubble of light surrounding you, a gentle shield from the outside world. Inside this bubble, there is only peace, only quiet, only calm. It is your personal sanctuary, and you're perfectly safe within it. 8. Let us bring our awareness to the body and to the breath. Take a slow, gentle breath in through your nose, feeling the cool air as it enters. Feel your chest and belly rise softly, like a gentle wave. And then, a long, slow breath out through your mouth, releasing the air with a soft sigh. Exhales softly. Let this breath carry away any tension you might be holding. With each exhale, feel your shoulders dropping away from your ears. Feel the small muscles in your face begin to smooth and soften. Your jaw can unclench, your hands can rest open and loose. Just breathing, in and out. A steady, quiet rhythm, like the rocking of a cradle. 7. As you continue to breathe, you might notice thoughts drifting through your mind. Thoughts of the day that has passed, or plans for the day to come. That is perfectly all right. At the number 7, we acknowledge these thoughts without judgment. We do not need to push them away or hold on to them. Imagine each thought as a single leaf floating on the surface of a calm, moonlit river. You're sitting on the riverbank simply watching them drift by. One leaf appears, and then it gently floats out of sight. Another comes, and it too passes. They are not you. They're just thoughts, passing through like clouds in a starlit sky. You can simply watch them go. 6. Now, at the number 6, we embrace the present moment. This moment, right here, is a gift of pure rest. Nowhere to be now, nowhere to go, no obligations. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. But for now, there is only this: the comfort of your bed, the sound of my voice, the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. This is a time dedicated solely to your peace and well-being. You have earned this rest. Allow yourself to fully inhabit this moment of stillness, free from all demands. 5. At 5, we connect with the quiet place of peace that always exists within you. It is a place that is always calm, always steady, no matter what storms may rage on the surface. It is like the deep, silent part of the ocean, untouched by the waves above. This peace is your friend. It is always there, waiting for you. You can visit it now. Feel it as a gentle warmth spreading from the center of your chest, a soft, golden light that fills you with a sense of profound well-being. This is your own inner peace, and it is here to comfort you. 4. As we sink deeper into this peaceful state, let us take a moment for gratitude. At the number 4, we bring to mind simple things that bring us comfort: the feeling of a soft blanket, the warmth of a cup of tea, the roof over your head that keeps you safe and dry, the body that carries you through each day, the memory of a loved one's smile. Let a gentle feeling of thankfulness wash over you for these simple, quiet gifts. Gratitude is a soft pillow for the heart to rest upon. 3. We're getting very close now. At the number 3, we allow our imagination to begin to stir. It is time to open the door to our story. Begin to picture a soft, deep blue of a winter's night sky. See the first gentle flakes of snow beginning to fall, spiraling down in the quiet air. Hear the distant, comforting sound of a train whistle, a low and melodic call through the sleeping landscape. Your mind is ready to receive the story, to build the world we are about to enter, a world of comfort, warmth, and gentle wonder. 2. At 2, let us do one final, gentle scan of the body. Start at the tips of your toes and slowly move your awareness upward. As you do, imagine a wave of relaxation washing over you, releasing any last whispers of tension. Your feet become heavy and warm. Your ankles and calves relax. Your knees and thighs let go. The gentle wave moves up through your hips, your stomach, your back, all softening, all sinking down. Your shoulders, arms, and hands are completely limp. Your neck and head feel heavy on the pillow. Every part of you is now at ease, ready for deep and restorative rest. And finally, 1. At the number 1, there is nothing left to do but to completely let go. Let go of your body. Let go of your thoughts. Let go of the day. Surrender fully to the journey ahead, the journey into our story, and the journey into sleep. You are ready. Gentle, rhythmic sound of a train on tracks begins softly. The world outside was a deep and velvety blue, a shade that only exists on the coldest of winter nights, when the moon is high and the snow is fresh. From his seat, Arthur could see the endless forest slipping by, a silent army of pines and firs, their branches heavy with white cloaks. Each tree was a unique silhouette against the luminous sky, some tall and proud, others stooped as if in quiet contemplation. The snow fell steadily, not in a hurried blizzard, but in a slow, hypnotic dance of flakes, each one catching the moonlight for a brief glittering moment before joining the quiet blanket below. Inside the train car, it was warm. A soft, golden light emanated from the small brass lamps fixed above each pair of seats, casting long, gentle shadows that swayed with the motion of the train. The air smelled faintly of old wood, wool, and the distant, comforting aroma of brewing tea. Arthur was settled into a plush, dark green velvet seat that felt as though it had held generations of quiet travelers just like him. He had taken off his heavy coat and boots, and now sat in his thick woolen socks, his feet resting on the warm metal grill of the heater beneath the window. The train itself was a gentle creature. It did not rush or clatter. It moved with a steady, rhythmic sway, a reassuring rock-a-bye that had already lulled most of the other passengers into a state of quiet repose. The sound was a constant, soothing hum, the soft click-clack of the wheels on the track, the low groan of the carriage as it navigated a gentle curve, the whisper of the wind against the thick glass of the window. It was a symphony of travel, a lullaby for the weary. Arthur had been weary for a long time. It was not a physical exhaustion, but a deeper, quieter kind that had settled into his bones, a weariness of the soul. The days had become a blur of gray obligations, of noise and hurry, of feeling disconnected from the simple, quiet pulse of life. This journey was an attempt to find that pulse again, an escape not from anything in particular, but towards something he could not quite name. He sought stillness. He sought silence. He rested his head against the cool glass of the window, feeling the faint vibration of the train's movement. He watched the landscape unfold like a storybook page. Here and there, the forest would break, revealing a vast, open field of untouched snow, a pristine canvas shimmering under the moonlight. It looked so soft, so impossibly pure, like a cloud that had settled upon the earth. In the distance, the dark, sleeping shapes of mountains rose up to meet the starry sky. Their peaks were frosted with silver, ancient and immense, guardians of the silent land. There were only a handful of other people in his carriage. Across the aisle, an elderly woman was knitting, her needles clicking together in a soft, companionable rhythm. Her ball of yarn, a deep crimson red, rested in her lap, a single spot of vibrant color in the muted tones of the car. She had a peaceful, contented expression on her face, her eyes focused on her work. Further down, a young man was reading a thick book, his brow furrowed in concentration, one hand absently stroking the head of a small dog that slept curled on the seat beside him. The dog, a scruffy terrier mix, would occasionally sigh in its sleep, a puff of warm air fogging the window. No one spoke. There was an unspoken agreement among the passengers, a shared understanding that this was a space for quiet contemplation. It was a traveling sanctuary. Arthur felt a sense of gratitude for this shared silence. It was a rare and precious thing in the world he had left behind. Here, there was no need for words, no pressure to perform. There was only the gentle company of fellow travelers, each lost in their own world, yet connected by the shared journey through the night. He had a small, worn leather satchel on the seat next to him. Inside, there was a thermos of hot water, a tin of his favorite black tea, a single, crisp apple, and a book he had not yet found the energy to open. For now, it was enough just to watch, to be a passive observer of the quiet beauty passing by his window. The sheer, unending whiteness of it all was cleansing. It was as if the world had been wiped clean, given a fresh start. The snow seemed to be falling more heavily now. The flakes were larger, fluffier, and they clung to the window for a moment before the train's motion swept them away. They swirled in the golden light of the carriage lamps, a chaotic and beautiful dance just beyond the glass. It made the inside of the train feel even cozier, even safer, a warm, moving bubble of light and life, gliding through a cold and sleeping world. Arthur felt like a child again, tucked safely in bed while a storm raged outside. He felt a deep sense of security, a feeling that had been absent from his life for a very long time. He decided it was time for tea. The ritual of it was comforting in itself. He moved slowly, deliberately, enjoying the small, focused actions. He unscrewed the cap of the thermos, and a plume of steam rose into the cool air of the carriage, smelling clean and warm. He reached into his satchel and took out a simple ceramic mug, smooth and heavy in his hands. He placed a single tea bag into the mug and poured the hot water over it. The water darkened instantly, releasing the rich, earthy scent of bergamot and black tea leaves. He watched the tea steep, the color deepening from a pale amber to a rich, dark brown. He held the warm mug in both hands, letting the heat seep into his palms. The warmth spread up his arms and into his chest, a comforting, grounding sensation. He brought the mug to his lips and took a small, careful sip. The tea was hot and strong, and it felt wonderful. It was a simple pleasure, but in this moment, it felt profound. It was a small act of kindness to himself. As he drank his tea, the train began to slow. The steady click-clack of the wheels grew less frequent. The rhythmic swaying softened into a gentle glide. The low hum of the engine deepened in pitch. Arthur looked out the window, curious. There was no station scheduled for another hour. The train was slowing in the middle of the vast, empty wilderness. The forest pressed in close on both sides of the track, the snow-laden branches of the pines almost close enough to touch. With a final, gentle sigh of its air brakes, the train came to a complete stop. Sound of train brakes hissing softly. The sudden silence was immense. The familiar sounds of motion, the wheels, the engine, the swaying of the carriage were all gone. All that remained was the faint whisper of the wind outside and the soft, rhythmic clicking of the old woman's knitting needles. The stillness felt vast and deep, as if the entire world were holding its breath. A moment later, a voice came over the intercom, soft and crackling, reassuring. It was the conductor. "Good evening, passengers," he said, his voice calm and unhurried. "We've had to make a brief, unscheduled stop. There's a bit of heavy snow on the line up ahead. Nothing to worry about. The crew is taking a look. We should be on our way again shortly. Please, make yourselves comfortable." There was no alarm among the passengers. The old woman glanced up from her knitting for a moment, a look of mild curiosity on her face, before returning to her work. The young man with the dog marked his page with a bookmark and looked out the window. A small, thoughtful smile on his face. The dog stirred, lifted its head, and then, seeming to sense that all was well, laid its head back down with a soft thump. Arthur felt a similar sense of peace. There was no rush. He had nowhere to be. This unexpected pause felt less like an inconvenience and more like a gift. A moment of perfect, profound stillness. He pressed his face closer to the window, peering out into the silent, snowy woods. Now that the train was still, the world outside seemed to come into sharper focus. He could see the intricate patterns of frost that had formed on the corners of the window pane, delicate ferns and stars of ice. He could see individual snowflakes as they landed on the dark, wet wood of a nearby branch, each one a perfect, tiny crystal. The moonlight was so bright on the fresh snow that it illuminated the forest in a soft, ethereal glow. It was not dark at all, but a world of silver and shadow. He could see deep into the woods. The trees stood in silent community, their branches intertwined. The snow on the ground was a perfect, unbroken blanket, mounded softly around the base of the tree trunks and over fallen logs. There were no footprints, no signs of life. It was a world untouched, pristine. The silence was so complete that he felt he could almost hear it. It was a living silence, full of the quiet presence of the sleeping trees and the fallen snow. He opened his window just a crack. A sliver of cold, clean air slipped into the warm carriage. It smelled of pine needles and cold earth and snow. The scent was crisp and invigorating. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the pure, cold air. It felt as though he was breathing in the very essence of the winter night. He could hear the faint, almost inaudible whisper of the snowflakes landing on the roof of the train. It was the softest sound imaginable, like a million tiny sighs. He sat there for a long time, just looking and listening, sipping his tea. The warmth of the mug in his hands was a pleasant contrast to the cold air on his face. He felt perfectly present, completely absorbed in the moment. The weariness that had been his constant companion seemed to have receded, pushed back by the immense peace of the scene before him. His mind, which had for so long been a tangle of worries and distractions, felt clear and quiet. It was as if the pristine landscape outside was reflected in his own inner world. He thought about the other people in the carriage, sharing this moment of unexpected stillness with him. The knitting woman, her hands moving with a practiced grace, creating something warm and beautiful out of a simple strand of wool. The young man, lost in the world of his book, his faithful dog at his side, the conductor with his calm, reassuring voice. They were all strangers, yet in this moment they felt like a small, temporary family, a little community of souls sheltered together in the heart of the winter wilderness. He noticed a small movement in the woods. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow shifting as a cloud passed in front of the moon. He squinted, his eyes scanning the space between two large pine trees about 50 feet from the track. And then he saw it again. It was a deer, a beautiful, graceful doe, stepping cautiously out from behind the cover of the trees. She moved with an incredible lightness, her slender legs barely disturbing the deep snow. Her coat was a soft, dusky brown that blended perfectly with the shadows of the forest. She lifted her head, her large, dark eyes seeming to look directly at the train. Her ears swiveled, listening to the profound silence. A puff of white vapor escaped her nostrils with each breath, a visible sign of her life and warmth in the cold air. Arthur held his own breath, not wanting to make a sound that might startle her. He felt a sense of wonder, a quiet joy that filled his chest. It was such a simple, unexpected sight, yet it felt like a miracle. A secret moment of wild beauty, revealed only to those who were still and patient enough to see it. The deer stood for a long moment, a perfect statue in the moonlight, her gaze calm and curious. Then, from the woods behind her, a second, smaller shape emerged. It was a fawn, its coat still faintly spotted, following closely in its mother's footsteps. The fawn nuzzled against the doe's side, and she lowered her head to gently lick its back. The sight was so tender, so full of gentle, unspoken love, that Arthur felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the heater or the tea. It was a warmth of the heart. He felt a connection to these creatures, to this silent, snowy world. He was not separate from it, looking out from his warm box of glass and steel. He was a part of it. His quiet presence was part of the scene, just as the deer and the trees and the falling snow were. The feeling of disconnection that had plagued him for so long began to dissolve. In this moment of shared stillness, he felt a profound sense of belonging. He belonged to this quiet night, to this gentle earth. The doe and her fawn stood for a few more minutes, their dark shapes a beautiful contrast to the shimmering white snow. Then, as silently as she had appeared, the doe turned and led her fawn back into the deep shadows of the forest. They disappeared, leaving the landscape as empty and pristine as it had been before. It was as if they had been a dream, a vision conjured by the moonlight and the silence. But Arthur knew they had been real. The image was burned into his memory, a perfect, precious gift. He closed the window, sealing the warmth back into the carriage. He leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes, holding the image of the deer in his mind. He felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet contentment that settled over him like a soft, warm blanket. The weariness was gone, replaced by a feeling of gentle renewal. It was as if the silent beauty of the winter night had washed him clean. Just then, he felt a gentle jolt. The train gave a low groan, and then slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, it began to move. The sound of train slowly starting to move. The click-clack of the wheels on the track resumed its steady, familiar rhythm. The carriage began to sway once more. The unscheduled stop was over. The journey was continuing. Arthur opened his eyes and looked out the window again. The forest was once more a blur of silver and shadow, the trees slipping past in a steady, silent procession. The moment of stillness was gone, but the feeling it had given him remained. He felt changed somehow, lighter, calmer. He finished the last of his tea, the warmth of final comfort and touch. He placed the empty mug back in his satchel and settled deeper into his seat. He pulled a thick woolen blanket from the overhead rack and draped it over his legs. The wool was soft and smelled faintly of cedar. He felt incredibly cozy, incredibly safe. The old woman across the aisle had put away her knitting. Her head was now leaning against the window, her eyes closed, a small, peaceful smile on her lips. The young man had also closed his book. He was asleep, his head resting on his chest, one arm draped protectively over his sleeping dog. The entire carriage was now a haven of slumber, moving gently through the night. Arthur did not feel the need to fight sleep. For the first time in a long time, he felt ready to welcome it. He felt that his mind was quiet enough, his heart calm enough, to truly rest. He turned his body slightly, curling up in the large, comfortable seat, his head pillowed against the soft velvet. He kept his eyes open for a little while longer, watching the hypnotic dance of the falling snow outside his window. the landscape began to change. The dense forest gave way to more open country. The train was climbing now, making its way into the heart of the mountains. The slopes rose up on either side of the track, vast white expanses under the moonlit sky. Here and there, a rugged outcropping of dark rock broke through the snow, like the bones of the earth showing through its skin. It was a landscape of immense scale and majestic beauty. The train crossed a high bridge, and for a moment the ground fell away on both sides. Arthur could see down into a deep, frozen valley. A river, now a winding ribbon of dark ice, snaked its way through the valley floor. The moonlight reflected off the ice, making it gleam like polished steel. It was a breathtaking sight, a world asleep under a blanket of stars and snow. He felt a sense of awe, a feeling of being very small in the face of such ancient and immense beauty. But it was not a frightening smallness. It was a comforting one. It put his own worries and concerns into perspective. They seemed so insignificant, so fleeting, in the context of these timeless mountains and the vast, silent night. He thought of the deer and her fawn, safe and warm somewhere in the deep woods. He thought of the other passengers, each on their own journey, each finding their own peace in the quiet rhythm of the train. He felt a sense of connection to them all, a shared humanity that transcended words. His eyelids began to feel heavy. The gentle rocking of the train was an irresistible lullaby. The warmth of the blanket, the soft golden light, the steady sound of the wheels on the track, it was all conspiring to draw him down into sleep. He allowed his eyes to close. In the darkness, behind his eyelids, he could still see the snowy landscape. He saw the shimmering fields, the silent pines, the majestic mountains. He saw the gentle, falling snow, and he saw the deer, her dark eyes full of a calm and quiet wisdom. The image was a peaceful anchor for his drifting mind. He took one last, slow, deep breath, and as he exhaled, he let go of the last remnants of the waking world. He was on a journey, both outside and within, and for now, all he needed to do was rest, to trust the steady, forward motion of the train to carry him safely through the night toward a new and brighter morning. He was warm. He was safe. He was at peace. And as the night train continued its steady, quiet journey through the sleeping, snow-covered mountains, Arthur drifted into a deep and dreamless sleep. The train moved on, a thread of warmth and light weaving its way through the vast tapestry of the winter night. The snow continued to fall, a soft, persistent whisper, covering the tracks behind it, erasing its path, leaving the world pristine and new for the coming dawn. Inside, all was quiet, all was calm. The gentle rhythm of sleep had taken over, a collective breath rising and falling with the motion of the train. It was a perfect, peaceful journey, and there was nothing more to do, nothing more to think, but to sleep. Just sleep. Deep, peaceful sleep. The hours passed like water flowing in a slow, deep river. The moon climbed higher in the sky, a polished silver disk, before beginning its long, slow descent toward the unseen horizon. The landscape continued to shift and change outside the windows of the train, but the changes were subtle, gradual. The mountains grew taller, their peaks sharper and more dramatic, their slopes steeper. The train wound its way through narrow passes, the rock faces close enough to cast deep, moving shadows into the carriage. Then the passes would open up again into wide, high valleys where the wind sculpted the snow into fantastic, waving drifts that looked like frozen white seas. Arthur slept deeply, his breathing slow and even. The journey had entered his dreams. He was not in the train, but walking through the snowy forest he had seen from his window. The air was cold on his cheeks, but he felt no chill. The silence was absolute, yet it felt full of a quiet, friendly presence. The moonlight filtered down through the snow-laden branches, creating a dappled, magical light on the forest floor. He walked without effort, his feet making no sound on the deep, soft snow. He felt a sense of purpose, a feeling that he was walking toward something wonderful, though he did not know what it was, and he was not afraid. He was filled with the sense of calm and patient expectation. In the carriage, the little terrier stirred in its sleep. It let out a soft whimper, its legs twitching as it chased some dream rabbit through a field of snow. Its owner, the young man, shifted in his own sleep, his hand moving to rest on the dog's back, a subconscious gesture of reassurance. The dog immediately grew still, settling back into a deep slumber with a contented sigh. The connection between them was a quiet, steady thing, a small, warm anchor in the vastness of the night. The old woman with the knitting was also dreaming. Perhaps she dreamed of her childhood, of winter nights spent by a crackling fire, the smell of baking bread in the air. Perhaps she dreamed of the faces of her children and grandchildren, their smiles like small, bright lanterns in her mind. Whatever she dreamed, her face was soft and peaceful, the lines of age smoothed away by the gentle hand of sleep. Her crimson yarn lay still in her lap, a promise of warmth and color waiting for the morning. The train itself seemed to have a consciousness, a gentle, wise spirit. It knew its path through the mountains. It navigated the steep grades and tight curves with a steady, practiced confidence. It was an old train, built of solid wood and steel, and it had made this journey 1,000 times before. It had carried countless souls through these mountains, through storms and clear nights, in every season. It was a keeper of stories, a vessel of quiet dreams. Its rhythmic sounds were a language of comfort, speaking of reliability and steadfastness. Click, clack, click, clack. I am here. I am steady. I will carry you safely. Outside, the world was alive with a secret, unseen life. A great horned owl, perched on the high branch of a dead pine, swiveled its head, its huge yellow eyes scanning the snowy ground for any sign of movement. Its soft, downy feathers made its flight completely silent as it launched itself into the air, a feathered shadow against the moon. In a burrow deep beneath the snow, a family of field mice huddled together for warmth, their tiny hearts beating a rapid, steady rhythm. Even the trees were not truly asleep. Deep within their frozen trunks, a slow, patient life force waited for the distant promise of spring. The entire landscape was breathing, a slow, deep breath that would last for the whole of the winter. Arthur shifted in his seat, the woolen blanket slipping slightly from his shoulder. He murmured something in his sleep, a single, unintelligible word. He was dreaming now of the deer and her fawn. He saw them standing in the moonlit clearing, their breath misting in the cold air. They were looking at him, not with fear, but with a calm, intelligent curiosity. There was an understanding in their dark, liquid eyes, a sense of shared existence, of being two different expressions of the same life force. The doe dipped her head in a slow, graceful gesture, a silent greeting before turning and melting back into the trees. Arthur felt a sense of profound peace and gratitude wash over him in the dream. The temperature inside the carriage remained perfectly constant. The old-fashioned heating system hissed and ticked softly, a network of warm pipes running beneath the floor, ensuring that the cold of the mountains could not touch the sleeping passengers. The golden lamps cast a light that was as soft and gentle as candlelight, a warm glow that made the rich, dark wood of the carriage walls gleam. It was a perfect cocoon, a self-contained world of warmth and safety, moving through the vast, cold emptiness of the night. Sometime in the deepest part of the night, the conductor made his rounds. He moved through the carriage with a quiet, practiced step, his footsteps making almost no sound on the thick runner that went down the center of the aisle. He was a tall, thin man with kind eyes and a neatly trimmed gray beard. He checked on each of his passengers with a gentle, paternal care. He saw the blanket that had slipped from Arthur's shoulder, and, with a slow, careful movement, he reached down and gently pulled it back up, tucking it snugly around him. He paused to look at the sleeping dog, a fond smile touching his lips. He made sure the heat was circulating properly and that all the windows were securely latched against the cold. His work was a quiet act of service, of ensuring the comfort and safety of those in his care. Satisfied that all was well, he moved on to the next carriage, a silent guardian of the night train. The train began its long, slow descent from the highest pass. The engine's hum changed pitch again, becoming a lower, more resonant thrum. The motion of the train became smoother, the curves less sharp. They were leaving the high peaks behind and moving down into the rolling foothills on the other side of the mountain range. The forest began to change as well. The hardy pines and firs started to be interspersed with the bare, skeletal silhouettes of deciduous trees, oaks and maples and birches, their delicate branches creating intricate, lace-like patterns against the lightening sky. For the sky was, almost imperceptibly at first, beginning to lighten. The deep, velvety blue-black of midnight was slowly giving way to a soft, washed-out indigo. In the east, a faint, pale line of gray was appearing along the horizon, a subtle announcement that the night would not last forever. The moon, now low in the west, looked pale and tired, its silver light fading in the face of the approaching dawn. The snow had stopped falling. The air outside was still and sharp, the world held in a state of suspended animation between the end of the storm and the start of the new day. The blanket of snow that now covered everything was even deeper, even more perfect than before. It softened every sharp edge, rounded every contour, transforming the world into a gentle, sleeping landscape of soft white shapes. Arthur began to stir from his deep sleep. It was not a sudden waking, but a slow, gentle floating up from the depths. He was first aware of the warmth of the blanket, the soft texture of the velvet seat against his cheek. Then he became aware of the steady, rhythmic motion of the train, the familiar click-clack of the wheels. He felt deeply rested, more rested than he had in months, perhaps years. The deep, soul weariness was gone, washed away by the long, peaceful night. He opened his eyes slowly. The golden lamps in the carriage were still lit, but they now seemed to compete with the new, cooler light that was filtering in through the windows. He sat up, stretching his arms and back, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles that had been still for a long time. He looked out the window and saw the first hints of color in the eastern sky. A faint blush of pink and softest orange was spreading along the horizon like a watercolor wash on pale gray paper. The dawn was coming. He felt a sense of quiet joy at the sight. He had not seen a sunrise in a very long time. His life had been one of late nights and rushed mornings, of artificial lights and closed-in spaces. To witness the simple, majestic miracle of a new day being born over a silent, snow-covered world felt like a profound gift. He watched, transfixed, as the colors deepened, growing more vibrant with each passing moment. The pinks became rose, the oranges turned to gold. The clouds on the horizon were set ablaze, their edges trimmed with fiery light. The world outside was slowly waking up. He saw a small farmhouse nestled in a fold of the hills, a thin curl of gray smoke rising from its chimney, a sign of life, of a fire being lit against the morning cold. The smoke rose straight up into the still air, a silent greeting to the new day. A little further on, he saw a field where a herd of dark-colored cattle stood huddled together, their backs covered in a dusting of snow, their breath pluming in the cold air. They watched the train pass with a placid, uncurious gaze. The other passengers were beginning to wake as well. The old woman sat up, blinking her eyes, a small, gentle smile on her face as she saw the sunrise. She reached for her knitting, her hands moving with their familiar comfort and rhythm, as if picking up a conversation right where she had left off. The young man stretched and yawned, then leaned down to scratch his dog behind the ears. The terrier wagged its tail, thumping it against the seat, its whole body wriggling with delight at the start of a new day. A low, friendly murmur of quiet morning sounds began to fill the carriage. Arthur felt a pang of sadness that the journey was coming to an end. He had grown to love this small moving world, this temporary community of quiet souls. He did not want to return to the noise and the hurry, but then he realized that he was not the same person who had boarded the train the evening before. Something inside him had shifted. The peace he had found in the stillness of the night, the sense of connection he had felt watching the deer, the quiet joy of witnessing the sunrise. These things would not leave him when he stepped off the train. He would carry them with him. The journey had given him a gift, a new perspective. It had reminded him of the beauty and the peace that were always there, just waiting to be noticed. He reached into his satchel and took out the crisp red apple. He polished it on his sleeve until it shone. He took a bite, and the taste was sharp and sweet and clean, the perfect taste for a new morning. He ate the apple slowly, savoring each bite, as he watched the landscape become more populated. More houses appeared. Then small villages, their windows beginning to glow with warm, yellow light. The world was waking up, and he felt ready to meet it. The conductor's voice came over the intercom again, his tone still calm and friendly, but with a new note of morning cheerfulness. "Good morning, passengers. We will be arriving at our destination in approximately 20 minutes. The local time is 6:30 in the morning. We hope you enjoyed your journey with us. 20 minutes. Arthur began to gather his things, moving with the same slow, deliberate care he had used when making his tea the night before. He folded the woolen blanket and placed it back on the overhead rack. He put his thermos and his book back into his satchel. He pulled on his warm socks and his sturdy boots, lacing them up carefully. He was preparing himself, not just to leave the train, but to re-enter the world in a new way, with a new sense of calm and purpose. The train was slowing now, passing through the outskirts of the city. The pristine fields of snow gave way to streets and houses, their roofs all covered in a thick white blanket. The city looked different under the snow, softer, quieter. The early morning traffic was light, the cars moving slowly and carefully. Chimneys puffed out white smoke, like old men clearing their throats on a cold morning. Everything seemed gentle, hushed, transformed by the magic of the snowfall. As the train pulled into the station, its final destination, Arthur looked over at the old woman across the aisle. She had finished her knitting. She was holding up a small, beautifully crafted crimson baby sweater. She caught his eye and gave him a warm, genuine smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Arthur smiled back. It was a simple, wordless exchange, but it was full of a shared understanding, a recognition of the pleasant journey they had taken together. The train came to its final, gentle stop with a soft hiss of its brakes. Sound of train brakes hissing, station ambiance. The journey was over. Arthur stood up and put on his heavy coat. He slung his satchel over his shoulder. He took one last look around the warm, golden carriage that had been his sanctuary for the night. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for its comfort and its peace. He stepped off the train and onto the coal platform. The morning air was crisp and clean. The station was quiet, only a few other travelers moving about. He could see his own breath misting in front of him. He looked up at the sky. The sun was now fully above the horizon, a gigantic golden coin in a sky of pale blue and rose. Its light was catching the millions of tiny ice crystals in the air, making it seem as if the world was filled with floating diamonds. He did not know what this new day, or the days to come, would hold, but he knew that he would face them differently. He had found a quiet place inside himself, a place of peace that he could return to. The night train had not just carried him through the mountains. It had carried him back to himself. He turned and walked toward the station exit, his footsteps crunching softly in the fresh snow. He felt calm. He felt rested. He felt ready. The memory of the journey, of the silent forest and the fallen snow and the gentle deer in the moonlight, was a warm and steady light within him. And as he walked out into the quiet, snow-covered city, he carried the peace of the mountains with him. He was home, not just in a place, but within himself. And now, my friend, it is time for your own journey to end, your journey into a deep and peaceful sleep. Let the story fade. Let the images of the snow and the mountains and the warm, quiet train carry you down, down, down into a comfortable, restorative rest. Sleep now, sleep well.